The solution of the crime problem lies in sure and swift punishment for those who break the law. We'll never bring crime under control as long as we are more concerned with the rights and treatments of those who break the law than we are with those victims of crime who are robbed, shot, stabbed, or raped on our streets and in our homes and businesses. The people of Alabama The people are tired of listening to the sob sisters and the bleeding hearts and the woeful mourners who are overly concerned with the criminals and how close together they are sleeping in the jails. That's just too bad. Certainly prisoners should be treated humanely, and so should the law-abiding citizens. Here are some new bills that we introduced mostly last time, but did not pass this legislature. I say, gentlemen, get on with it and pass these bills. No parole for first-degree murder if the death penalty is not received. In rape cases, making inadmissible a victim's past sexual life as testimony in order to encourage them to testify, which many will not do at the present time, and it's very unfair to the women of Alabama. A mandatory life sentence for the third conviction. A mandatory life sentence for the third conviction for a crime of violence. A mandatory additional 5 years for use of a gun to commit robbery, rape, burglary, or kidnapping. Change conspiracy to commit a felony from a misdemeanor to a felony. To allow subpoena of out-of-state witnesses in criminal trials. To allow combining of offenses and provide for joint trials in criminal indictments. Make the trial judge instruct jurors about paroles and the circumstances under which criminals might obtain parole. Also allow the prosecution to comment about parole and his or her argument to the jury. Making it a felony to introduce or possess firearms, ammunition, or other weapons in jails or state prisons. And increase the state reward in heinous crimes cases from $1,000 to $10,000.
How do you react to what he had to say?
I agree with most of what the governor has recommended. I have sponsored the rape evidence bill, which he endorsed for the past 2 years. I think we do need additional funds for prison construction. I certainly concur that swift and sure punishment is the best deterrent to crime. I'm also sponsoring a repeat offender bill and sponsored it also last year. So in the totality, I share most of what the governor recommended in this area.
I believe that the utility package that he's talking about, he's going to give the people of Alabama a look at who's voting for or against the utilities. That is going to be one of the prime factors. And the other is to look at the crime package.
I thought the reception of the response of those in attendance was real good. He touched on many subjects I know that are close and near the heart of many Alabamians. He was talking about the crime legislation and also on the utility bills, George. So I think that if you notice the crowd, this seemed to be a more sensitive area. I thought by and large it was very good, and I think he has some good proposals for this legislation.
I guess the major emphasis would have had to been on the area of the crime package, or the Get Tough on Criminals package, and more money for the prisons and more money for the highway department. It was, I guess, the major thrust of the speech as I saw it.
Mr. McNair, are there any segments of the governor's address tonight that you might disagree with?
Well, I would say there may be one or two things in that I disagree with. First of all, I'd like to say he had some things in his speech I did agree with. But the one thing that seemed a little ambivalent to me, he had just made a statement about doing something for the people and being concerned about the people. And then he turned right around and said he wanted us to vote to do away with annual sessions and go back to, having sessions every 2 years so that it didn't spend so much money. Last year was not an expensive session because we didn't come back for any special session last year. However, I agreed that he had to call a special session, but there weren't any calls. So last year wasn't that expensive. And the next thing, if the people are to have any semblance of control, then They just begin to get a little of it by us being here every year.
For many years, we've been one of the few states that have had a broad-based sales tax, and the reason that we've had this is because we've not had a high ad valorem tax. And ours has always been all across the board, and many people in this state find it very difficult now with everything else soaring, particularly these people on fixed income and these retired people and medium income people that will find a sales tax relief, I think, would help them. This merely exempts groceries and prescription drugs from sales tax.
Nobody's asking for that. They should go to jail for punishment. Genealogists in our country, and I believe the country is sweet, has started wrong. Says it's really, I would oversee the prison operation. They serve without pay. We're indebted to these fine citizens who have served this area because they're thinking about the matter of defense and criminal prosecution. Well, I don't think really criminal lawyers in this state are the legislation because they are prosecutors all the time. But for too long now, the prison operation in Alabama is operated from without the Executive Department of State Government. In other words, the governor ought to have the authority to direct change in operations. The legislature does not have a means for day-to-day control. And although the board members are fine citizens and individuals, some of the best people we have in the state, they are not paid and are not full-time administrators. Government by boards and commissions is oftentimes slow or non-responsive to the will of the people. I believe that our present system is a mistake. During this session, I'm going to present to you a comprehensive governmental reorganization bill proposing that prisons be placed under the control of the Chief Executive of Alabama, and I hope you will see fit to approve this change in the reorganization bill. But however you...
I agree on the crime package. I can't agree with the prison propositions without some really upgrading of the management of the prison system. 98% of the prisoners in Alabama prisons will eventually come back into society, so you can't just ignore that fact because they're coming back into the communities, and this is a proven fact. And I think that instead of just putting more money into the prisons, we've got to make sure that we are doing the job there. And I've been accused of being too tough on the prison officials, and I don't apologize for this. I think the real problem is management, pure and simple.
The bill I introduced a moment ago, as you know, it's a bill to provide sales tax exemption for groceries and for prescription drugs. For many years, we've been one of the few states that have had a broad-based sales tax, and the reason that we've had this is because we've not had a high ad valorem tax. And ours has always been all across the board, and many people in this state find it very difficult now with everything else soaring, particularly these people on fixed income and these retired people and medium income people that will find a sales tax relief, I think, would help them. This merely exempts groceries and prescription drugs from sales tax. It's patterned somewhat after the Florida law because we have one of the few states, as I say, that have a broad-based sales tax that cover all of the necessities that we use. And I think the reason that this is a good time to consider, we're going to bring on board, no matter what happens in the ad valorem field, more revenue. We're also going to have, or we are now experiencing, a tremendous growth in the Special Educational Trust Fund. Not that all of this money will come from that, but a large amount will, of course. Therefore, with this bill, it's very timely as far as offsetting some of the loss that we'll experience from this exemption, but it will help so many people. And the implementation date of this bill would be October 1 of '78, so it would be plenty of time to fulfill any commitments that we've made at this time.
They poked a hole through a plaster roof onto a catwalk, then pushed open an exterior window and threw out a rope that they had fashioned out of bed sheets. One man made good his escape. He is Charles Varner. He is described as 5'8", 145 pounds, 24-year-old black male. He was the first man down the rope, and on his way down, he went by a window, looked in and saw two deputy sheriffs eating their dinner. They saw him too. They ran outside on the first floor in time to catch the second man, Gregory Brown, coming down that same rope. Brown is now back in his jail cell in the Montgomery County Jail. Clark Edwards, WSFA TV News.
Well, people like to compare salaries. If you're going to compare salaries, you have to look at it this way. A firefighter trains from the day he comes to the department until the day he retires. It's a continuous program. A starting firefighter makes $2.87 an hour. You should compare it to skilled labor, which runs from $4.50 to $5.50 an hour. And even bus drivers in the city of Montgomery make $4.56 an hour. I'm glad to see them make it. We just need to make more also.
How much would you say you need to make more?
Well, as I previously mentioned, I want to leave that open. We're approximately 14.9% behind as far as purchasing power in the last 3 years. We've lost that much due to inflation.
With prayer each day. Hopefully this will never be. The attendance was good.
Complete the mailing of the forms by March the 10th, 1977. However, no forms will be sent to local board members until the completion of present court action. Compliance will continue in the 1977 regular session of the Alabama Legislature. I want to say that everyone here, any and all, we welcome any comments on any matters before the commission today. These thoughts in mind, we turn to the working line in this order. Now,
And additionally, the members of the Alabama Legislature amending law express.
Already this morning, Mr. Lee was there.
I'd be glad to answer any questions now that you might have about this. I'll also say to you that, as I mentioned, I've directed that we get our records up to date going back to 1972. When that information is compiled, and when we have that compiled, we'll make an administrative decision at that time as to the feasibility. The audit report reveals that deficiencies do exist within the city relating to compensatory leave records. The audit further indicates that certain individuals may have been overpaid upon leaving city employment. I am directing that each department review and correct all leave records dating from February 1st, 1972 to the present time. And I'm also directing that each department review all documents relating to termination pay of individuals that may have had leave time computed in error or not in compliance with applicable laws and regulations. The data processing system for accounting for leave should be implemented not later than April 1st, 1977, and with proper control at departmental level, the problem will be solved. Call the attention to the audit report, and on the back of the audit report, last page, I believe you will find Mr. Moss' memorandum. This is the audit by Hill, Fleur and Company, and this is the entire audit. I want to call to your attention that the questions on the test will be made public. The grand jury set the test for the DA's office and any person who's taking it from up there, and there will be according to the agreement, he and his staff would be, some of those members will be taking it. The questions will be arranged by the polygraph. The person giving the polygraph is going to determine largely how to get to the thrust of the matter and get to the thrust of the questions. And I'm confident that they will do just that.
Well, that's right, George. This is one of the three most important issues facing this legislature. It has not been recodified since 1940, and we found today that the commission who devised this code had changed the primary election date themselves to make it August. Their sentiment in the legislature either to have it in May or September and work around meeting of the session. We don't need to be meeting here trying to tend to the people's business when we're expected to campaign for re-election back home. So this held up the code, and I think there will be a compromise worked out, but I regret this delay. Now, there are others on the committee who feel that lawyers wrote this bill and they're just suspicious of it because it came from a legal group. But the code, as you know, is for everybody, and we need to codify our laws to help lawyers serve the people.
No, you set that up. Count up how many have.
No, I said, who is writing?
Raise your arm lifting that up.
Huh?
I am.
For record.
Jackson State.
E-E-A-Y.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trot.
How's that, T-R-O?
T.
Coach, who's going to be Harvey's big competition in this 60-yard dash?
Well, right now it looks like it will be Johnny Williams from Austin P and this boy Trot from Jackson State. But of course, you know, all these sprinters that we're putting in the invitation have run 6'1" or better, except maybe the Furman boy, who's listed as 6'3", though he's been a good sprinter. So in the invitation, this is what it is. This is the top sprinters in the meet. And the way it's set up, of course, it's each coach tells who he feels is ready to run in the meet. He may have a sprinter that's run 6 flat or 6'1". He may know he's not ready for this competition, and he puts him in the open event. Or he may want him to run more races. The open event will run 4 races, while the invitation runners only run 2.
Okay, Williams, I understand, has already turned in a 5.9 this year, which is a really excellent time, just a tenth of a second above the world record. Right?
Well, that's right. Of course, Johnny Williams is a real fine sprinter. He got in the finals of the NCAA last year. He ran 5.9 at Jackson, and he always runs well. Now, Johnny may be even better at the 100 and 220, but he ran well last year indoors. Harvey has never run real fast times. He's really been a good competitor, and I've been trying to tell him, don't worry about times, because the times will come. If you keep winning, you'll make times. But last year, Harvey never ran better than 6 flat, but he never did lose in collegiate competition.
Well, I tell you, we needed to win this one because every year we play Florida A&M, it's just nip and tuck all the way, and we got the guys fired up, you know, before the game. And I told them, I said, look, we got to have this one. Let's play team basketball, and they really did. Everybody answered the call, and I just can't say enough for them. Our crowd responded, you know, when they came back to within 8. Our crowd, you know, gave us that little extra boost, and the guys just, you know, came to play basketball tonight.
The expense of mailing city correspondence is a necessary evil for most municipalities, but not for the city of Arlington, which now delivers more than 30,000 city water bills each month by hand. The idea for the hand delivery service sprang up after first-class postage rates jumped from 10 to 13 cents, representing an increase in the city budget of more than $11,500. So now, after a successful test period last summer, and overwhelmingly favorable response from city residents, a crew of 3 young women works full-time making the rounds, dropping the bills in a plastic bag and firmly attaching them to doorknobs. Not everyone gets the personal touch. Commercial operations and outlying residential areas are excluded. But this method still makes a significant dent in the city's postage bill.
Turns out, when you put the pencil to it, that by hiring the 3 employees, purchasing another vehicle, for them to travel in, also buying the baggies that we put the bills in, that we can save between $14,000 to $16,000 a year.
The logical extension would be to apply this procedure to other utility bills. Other companies have expressed an interest, but legal problems prevent combined delivery. Nevertheless, it's an idea whose time apparently has come. Willie Monroe reporting from Arlington.
My pleasure this morning to introduce to the people of the city of Montgomery Lieutenant General retired Alvin C. Gillum, who has just recently been named by me as the Acting Director of Public Safety. General Gillum and I came to know each other just about the time I became mayor. I had an opportunity to be briefed at Maxwell Air Force Base while he was commander of Air University. I acquired a great deal of respect for him and his ability, and particularly his organizational ability. And since that time, we've been friends and been together on other occasions. Last Saturday afternoon, I asked General Gillum by telephone to come out of retirement and serve this community for the interim period as the Acting Director of Public Safety. He readily agreed and made it very specific that he was not looking for a full-time job. So it's with a great deal of pleasure that I present to the people of this city Mr. Alvin C. Gillum, the Acting Director of Public Safety.
General Gillum, do you have any plans for reorganization of the Montgomery Police Department at this time?
No, I can't say right now I have any plans. I've only been on the job for 2 days. I think it'd be a little premature for me to go in there and start reorganizing something that I'm still getting acquainted with. I'll do whatever I think has to be done to make the department as efficient as I can.
As you know, and if you will reread the grand jury report, there was a section in the grand jury report that said that they hoped that Mayor Robinson would follow his suggestion that I made to the grand jury, that we would study the policies and procedures of the Montgomery Police Department. We intend to move forward with that, and that will probably come to light in the form of asking the National League of Cities, the organization to which this city belongs and pays dues, to furnish us with Mr. Quinn Tam, furnish us with the services of Mr. Quinn Tam, their criminal justice expert who's on the staff, to come down and be with us for a while. Mr. Gillum will be making contact with the National League of Cities in the near future.
Sir, did you get any impression of the police department and its operations while you were head of the Air University? And now these things come to mind of some changes that you had planned while you were at the Air University?
No. When I was involved with the Air University, I was involved with the Air University, and I really didn't sit out there and pass judgment on how Montgomery was being run. My contacts and association with Montgomery were quite pleasant. I had no bones to pick or axes to grind with things as I found them, and I can't say that I had any impressions at that time of things that I would change where I involved with Montgomery. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I retired Montgomery was I was somewhat impressed by the municipal services. Not to say that they're perfect in every case, but I've lived all over this world. And by and large, Montgomery does a pretty good job with things like fire departments, police departments, picking up the trash, etc. I'm sure we all complain once in a while about one thing or another, but my overall analysis or evaluation as a private citizen was that Montgomery looked pretty good.
General Gillum, what is your impression of the acceptance that you received when you got to the department Monday morning? Do you think you were resented by some of the members of the department?
I didn't see any scowls on anybody's faces. I'm sure there are loyalties, or they're bound to be, to people who've been around there for some time, but everybody was most cooperative, friendly, and I have no apprehension about my associations as I see them beginning to develop.
General Gillum, what are the chances of you remaining permanently as the Public Safety Director for the City of Montgomery?
I don't really know. As Mayor Robinson said, I did ask or did accept the job on an interim basis, and you're saying what's interim?
That's right.
Well, several months, and I appreciate that if it is known, and it is, that you don't intend to make a full career out of it, and this is not because of lack of interest on my part, but I did have some other commitments which were rather abruptly terminated on Saturday afternoon, that this can have an impact or some influence. People might say, well, he too shall pass, and then we'll break in another one. I'll just tell you this, as long as I'm down there, I'm going to act like I'm going to be there forever. But that is not my intention. I'm not just going to go through the motions, and I don't regard it as a part-time job. It hasn't been for the last 3 years.
What would be the chances of you accepting a permanent position as public safety director?
I don't know yet. But right now, that's not my inclination.
That's not your inclination, but would you take the job?
Oh, if I became so enamored I couldn't live without it. I don't mean to convey the impression that it's not a very interesting and challenging post. It is. Nor do I think I've become lazy. But I was in the military for over 38 years and worked fairly hard during that period of time. And I do have a part-time job in an area I do know something about, the airplane business, that I'm not convinced at this time I want to do away with.
Mayor Robinson, when will the complete results of the polygraph test be made available to the public?
I hope that will be very soon. Some are in the mail now, I've been told. Others were mailed yesterday. Some of them perhaps are already into the lawyer's hands at the Attorney General's office. I don't really know. But whenever they are assembled and we have it matched up together with them, I will release that information.
Mayor Robinson, where is the city of Montgomery in terms of the controversy between the police department and the district attorney's office?
Well, I think the controversy is about over. We're certainly getting very close to being over, I believe. And we're looking forward to being over and then getting on with the business of running up our city. And that involves the police department, the fire department, and all the rest of the city functions. You know, we've been administratively bogged down with some of these details in the weeks past. But I intend for Mr. Gillum, the director, to take the workload burden and to get the place moving up there again. I think it's about over.
I don't want to belabor this point or not, but there seems to be a controversy now over whether or not the district attorney, Mr. James Evans, should take the polygraph test or not.
Well,
do you have any comments on that situation?
Well, no direct comments on that particular statement you just made. I just would, and all I will simply say about it is that I went before the grand jury and with the Attorney General and Mr. Foreman, and we hammered out an agreement, and I've done the very best I know how to live up to that agreement. And I'm going to continue to do all that I can to see that it is carried out in its entirety with the T's crossed and the I's dotted. And that's my responsibility, and I intend to see that I do that.
4.5 years ago, except for 2 community centers, there was no city-owned recreation land in Wetumpka. But things have changed since then. The city now has 2 parks and has begun construction on another, 19 acres worth at a cost to the city of over $52,000. The construction of this park is part of a healthy city recreation budget of some $150,000, more than has been spent on recreational activities over the past 15 years combined. And supporters of the park contend the money is well invested.
We feel that recreation is essential to having the right type citizens and the right type people, and begin early and have them to grow into good citizens. And we feel that this is the way to prosper, and even in the future it could cut down on the possibilities of police force and so forth, but we're sold on recreation.
What is this park going to have?
This park is going to have a Little League ball field, a Babe Ruth ball field, and softball, and also have tennis courts, volleyball, and then we'll have a kiddie land fenced around and used for real small kids.
One problem with growing up in a small town is that there's just not a whole lot to do. But by April 1st of this year, when this park is completed, Wetumpka citizens hope to have solved that problem. From Wetumpka, Alabama, Bill Weaver, WSFA TV News.
It's a $30 million lawsuit against the Chase Manhattan Corporation and one of their subsidiaries, wholly owned subsidiaries.
Now it's 15 and 15, correct?
It's 15 compensatory and 15 punitive damages.
And what is the charge in the suit?
The charge in the suit basically is quite complicated. There's several counts. Basically is that the lending institution that has a percentage of ownership in the club has not lived up to all the arrangements that were previously entered into.
Now, does this affect the club itself?
No way at all it affects the club. This is a hassle between myself and the lending institution. And since the newscast last week mentioned that the club itself was folding, I thought it would be a good idea to let the membership and the prospective membership know that this in no way affects the club membership. As a matter of fact, it's prospering. We had 9 new members last night, and we've picked up 325 members in the last 7 months this club has been open. And I just want to assure everybody at the club that this has nothing at all to do with their membership or how the club will be run.
What is the status of the suit now?
Well, the suit was filed in a federal district court here in Montgomery, and the defendants in this case have 30 days to respond with an answer on how we are to proceed.
So it'll be 30 days before they respond, about 25 days from now.
Somewhere in that period of time, right?